Coming in at number 10 is Omega Spawn. The Omega Spawn is what would have happened if Malebolgia and Satan had their way with Al Simmons. In the Omega Spawn storyline, Satan gave a Hell Spawn complete control of Hell and unlimited necro power to combine the forces of Earth and Hell in order to defeat Heaven. For this to happen though, Hell had to conquer Earth first, and that's what the Omega Spawn set out to do. He unleashed all the villains imprisoned in Hell and sicked them all on the hapless mortals of Earth. That's us. But he decided it wasn't worth his time when there is a whole universe of planets that he can conquer instead, and that's what he did. But while he was out doing that, he ended up being teleported back to Earth and trapped there, and that made him not too happy. So he comes back to try and conquer Earth, and that brings him into direct conflict with the other Hellspawn, including the main universe Al Simmons, and he needs as much help as he can get with this guy. Number 9, Medieval Spawn. Naturally, Medieval Spawn was not only a Hellspawn, but also a knight living in 16th century England. Sir John of York fought during a civil war in England, but was released from his service to Henry II after he and 3 others mistook the king's angry rambling and ranting for direct orders to wipe out who the king was talking about. So he went and took the life of none other than the Archbishop of Canterbury. Once the knight passed on to the afterlife at the hands of his king's bodyguards, he was sent to Hell for his crimes, where he made a deal with Malebolgia and returned as a Hellspawn. He then went around England committing good deeds in the hopes of redeeming himself, but he continues to survive after being basically bonded to his armor and now possessing any person who chooses to don his helmet. Number 8, Gunslinger Spawn. Gunslinger Spawn made his debut in Spawn 174 and 175, originally known as Jeremy Winston. He crossed paths with Al Simmons' grandfather, Francis Parker. Now, Winston's life took an extremely, and if you've read Spawn before, pretty expected dark turn when he was unjustly blamed for the tragic loss of his family at the hands of some greedy landowners, and the vengeful townsfolk of Bain, Colorado, back in 1881, took out their own form of justice on Winston. However, fate had other plans for Winston when the demon Mammon extended an intriguing offer: a fresh chance in the afterlife as a Hellspawn. In a twist of destiny, Winston accepted this offer, and thus the Gunslinger Spawn was born. His emergence marked a brutal reckoning as he sought vengeance, mercilessly dispatching the entire town, leaving only Francis Parker alive under orders from Mammon, who hinted at grander and more sinister Hellspawn schemes yet to unfold. Number 7, Japanese Spawn. A lot like Marvel's Wolverine, Spawn's immense popularity led to a unique Japanese adaptation of the character officially licensed as a manga. The creative force behind this 200-page manga is Juzo Tokoro, who not only provides the artwork but also skillfully weaves the narrative. In this distinctive Japanese take on Spawn, our anti-hero's name is Ken Kurosawa, a destitute street thug who ekes out a living by undertaking some pretty unsavory jobs for quick cash. However, Ken's life takes a tragic and pretty familiar to Spawn fans turn when he's ruthlessly slain by the very clients that he served. Much like Al Simmons' transformation, Ken too is resurrected as a Hellspawn. Now, what's intriguing is how the manga draws eerie parallels between Ken's life and Al Simmons' life, creating a captivating narrative that melds the spirit of Spawn with a distinctive Japanese twist. Number 6, Dark Ages Spawn. In the realm of Hellspawn history, predating the advent of Medieval Spawn and his exploits in the gritty medieval landscape of England, there was a character with a distinctly metal edge, known as the Dark Ages Spawn. He was an intimidating presence during the 10th century in the tumultuous backdrop of post-Roman Empire Europe, aptly named the Dark Ages. Before donning the mantle of a Hellspawn, this mysterious character went by the moniker Black Knight or Lord Covenant. And while those names are, yes, very edgy, he himself was far from the typical dark-hearted villain. Instead, he championed the cause of the common folk, often coming to the aid of unfortunate peasants in their times of need. His heroic nature sets the stage for the intriguing dilemma that the Dark Ages Spawn faces upon his transformation into a Hellspawn. Confronted with the choice of using his newfound powers to protect the innocent peasants from the ravages of ruthless warlords, or seizing the opportunity to become the ultimate warlord in Dark Ages Europe, his path was anything but clear-cut. Whatever he decided to do, he would be known as one of the most badass looking Hellspawns around, because he really is. Number 5, Hellspawn. Who would have thought that Spawn, a character already shrouded in ominous darkness, could have an even darker counterpart? Well, it may not come as a surprise to comic book fans, especially the fans of Marvel's Ultimate Universe, but it is none other than Brian Michael Bendis that came up with the ingenious creation of Hellspawn, a version of the character that is somehow even more dark and adult. This spin-off from the Image Comics franchise takes Spawn into an even more mature and disturbing realm, delving into the grittier aspects of life that I really can't even mention here. Some might argue it wasn't necessary, especially with already unsettling characters like Billy Kincaid, as an example, lurking in the mainstream Spawn stories. However, the birth of Hellspawn injected a somewhat fresh dose of vitality into the Spawn universe. It plunged deeper into the abyss, creating an atmosphere that was even more twisted and nightmarish. In this grim spin-off, Spawn becomes a lot less chatty and a lot more trigger-happy. Number 4. Angel Spawn. The two eternal brothers of God and the Devil had and have power far beyond any mortal could ever hope to achieve, at least in the comic books. Because of that, when they decide they don't agree on certain things and go to war, it causes quite the ruckus, and of course, they choose the Earth as their battleground. Now, the mother, who is like their mother, needs to put this to an end and calls on Spawn to do it. In order for Spawn to end their squabble that made its way to Earth, he had to get a wee bit of a power boost. More like a god-sized power boost. The mother tasked Spawn with eating the forbidden fruit to grant him a kind of godhood, and in this new form, Spawn wipes out all the forces of both heaven and hell. Yes, God and Satan eventually do defeat him, but Spawn is soon resurrected and uses his powers to lock away the brothers and resurrect all the mortals who were taken out in their war. Number 3. War Spawn. In Spawn number 179, we meet Captain Thomas Coram, an English soldier in the midst of the First World War. Now, Thomas led a life of privilege and comfort, but also had a secret love affair with Selma, an African-American woman. Their relationship takes a tragic turn when Selma departs after giving birth to their son, Michael. Now, it would be years before they're reunited, and the circumstances absolutely sucked as Thomas promised to look over Michael on the front lines of World War I. Tragically, Michael is KIA, and this event drives Thomas to make a desperate pact with Mammon to become a Hellspawn in exchange for his son's life. Thomas's journey as the War Spawn unfolds in the infernal battlegrounds of Hell itself, an eternity spent in ceaseless combat. Meanwhile, Michael's descendants, his granddaughter Wanda specifically, goes on to play a pivotal role in the life of Al Simmons, the future Spawn, as his wife. Number 2. Norse Spawn. Introduced by Bo Smith and Brad Gorby, the Norse Hellspawn made his first appearance in Spawn Fan Edition number 1, emerging as the fearsome Viking raider known as Nordic. Now, Nordic liked to spend his free time doing all the wholesome stuff you're used to, like raiding and pillaging. However, his reign of terror met a fierce end when he faced off against McFallen, the Dragon Master, a renowned champion of the people. Now, taken to Hell, the impressed Melbolgia offered Nordic the ominous opportunity to become a Hellspawn. Without hesitation, Nordic accepted this. With his trusty horse Ghoul and accompanied by 2 fearsome wolves, Demas and Darkos, the Norse Spawn resumed his reign of terror 5 years later as one of the most terrifying Hellspawn ever. His vengeful path of destruction led him back to McFallen's village, where he exacted revenge by wiping out its inhabitants and reducing the village to ashes. However, he was thwarted in his attempt to dispatch McFallen himself thanks to the intervention of Mercy, a hunter from heaven. When the odds turned against him, Melbolgia intervened, pulling Nordic from the battlefield to preserve his life, as he would become the benchmark by which all future Hellspawn would be measured. And finally, in at number 1, Samurai Spawn. The Samurai Spawn made his dramatic debut in Spawn number 114 within a tale narrated by the demon Mammon himself. This story transported us to the feudal ages of Japan, where we encountered Lord Izanagi Nakadai. On the battlefield, he was a figure both feared and respected, a warrior of great renown, but upon his return home, he faced a heart-wrenching reality when his beloved wife and son had succumbed to a devastating fever during his absence. In his grief, Lord Nakadai withdrew from the world, living as a solitary and mourning figure. Yet his solitude was eventually interrupted by an old man who gave him cryptic warnings of an impending dragon battle. Now, draped in armor and wielding power, both reminiscent of a hellspawn, this formidable warrior embarked on a journey across the land. His mission? To protect the people from the threat of ruthless bandits and bring them salvation as he traveled the path that led him to a climactic showdown with said dragon. However, a tragic twist of fate unfolded as he neglected to heed the old man's wisdom and failed to look into the eyes of the dragon. When he finally returned years later, he was met with a desolate and ruined home. The samurai spawn returned in the modern day Japan and faced off against Al Simmons' spawn himself. And the battle was very fierce, each demonstrating their martial prowess. Yet, it was the modern spawn who emerged victorious, as was going to be the case no matter what, leaving the fallen warrior who finally gazed into the eyes of the dragon, which was Al himself.
Number 10, Age of X. There isn't really an exact X-Men team in this reality, but there are the Force Warriors, so I guess we could consider them as an X-Men alternate? In Age of X, we learn of Earth 11326. Here, there was no Professor Xavier to bring mutants together, uniting them. As a result, anti-mutant sentiments grew, and following the Phoenix disaster, mutants were on the brink of extinction in the US, thanks to national and honestly global persecution. However, some were able to rise up and join the Mutant Liberation Front, fighting to protect their kind. Eventually, the mutants were unified by Magneto, who brought them together at a place he built called Fortress X. During the siege of the fortress, each night barriers protecting the place would be rebuilt by the Force Warriors, a team of psionic mutant powerhouses including Legion, Hellion, Betsy Braddock's Psylocke, Carmela Unnasion's Standoff, and finally, Rachel Summers' Revenant. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when we talk about alternate versions of alternate characters, well guess what? We got a whole playlist filled with that, so you can go check that out and learn even more. Number 9, Witchbreed. The Witchbreed hails from Earth 311. They are mutants of that reality. Witchbreed is a term given to anyone who basically kind of has powers in that reality, but while some of these characters are villains, not all of them are bad. In fact, the Witchbreed team is made up of mutants who attempt to help others, who are good, and yet who are mistreated just because of who they are, like them. The Earth 311 reality is known as 1602, named after the year it's set in. The team here is led by Carlos Javier, and members include the Angel, Hal McCoy, Petro, Sister Wanda, Scotty is Summerisle, Roberto Trefusis, and Jean Grey, who is disguised as a boy and going by John Grey. Number 8, Hellions. Okay, so this one isn't technically an alternate version of the X-Men, but they are from the main continuity. But even discounting that, because I have talked about main reality alternate versions of the X-Men in the past and included them on my list, counting them according to my own self-defined parameters for the list, this team also isn't technically a version of the X-Men specifically. They're just a different mutant group in the main continuity. But I love them so much, and they are a mutant team, and they certainly can be scary if you get on their bad side. Hellions is a team that was made up of those mutants that Krakoa didn't quite know what to do with, considering them too troublesome to deal with. As such, Mr. Sinister suggested that they ban these problematic, less stable mutants together, petitioning to have them as his own team that he could then, rehabilitate. Use! Under the leadership of Quanon, who goes by Psylocke, herself considered a somewhat problematic mutant due to her past and her weird connection for many years with Betsy Braddock, who is now Captain Britain. This team is probably one of my favorite mutant teams I have ever read in the comics, and despite them all kind of being scarily unhinged at the start, I came to love every single member of this team by the end of this series. This version of the Hellions includes Wild Child, Orphan Maker, Nanny, John Greycrow, Havoc, and a former member of Emma Frost's Hellions, Empath. Number 7, Naughty X-Men. I don't know, just the idea that this team exists out there in the multiverse kind of scares me. It's not so much that these X-Men were created to be a sexy variant. It's more that they hail from the bizarre world of the Mojoverse. But also, think of the ratings! Initially, I of course thought that Mojo had created them solely for that purpose, but apparently he did not. They were simply an alternate version of the team that auditioned to replace the Earth 616 team after they seemingly died. Even Mojo wasn't feeling it and ordered them to be dumped, likely implying that they should be permanently removed after they auditioned for him. Number 6, Marvel Zombies. What makes the Marvel Zombies reality version of the X-Men so scary? How about the fact that most of them were killed off and those that did survive became bloodthirsty zombies? I think the idea of that should be enough to make your blood run cold. Marvel Zombies is a brutal reality known as Earth Z or Earth 2149. While we don't know much about what this world was like before the zombies arrived, it's expected that for the most part it was pretty similar to Earth 616, except for a few minor differences as far as I can tell. The X-Men end up getting attacked early on by Alpha Flight, and those members of the team that survive then go on to fight alongside one of the last standing mutants of the living, Magneto, who becomes sort of like their new leader in this reality. Also, I gotta say, you know you're in some bleak reality when Magneto becomes the leader of the X-Men. I feel like I have yet to see a reality where he leads the X-Men that is without some extreme element of darkness, other than of course the main continuity. Number 5, Dark Reign. During the Dark Reign event, we didn't just have a Dark Avengers team. We also had a Dark X-Men team as well. Dark Reign was an event that happened in 2009. It followed Secret Invasion. After Norman Osborn was broadcast on live television taking out the threat of the Skrull Queen, Varanki, who led the Skrull invasion of Earth, Norman was celebrated as a hero. Surprised? I know. He was made the head of the organization created to replace S.H.I.E.L.D., which at this time was fully defunct. Norman named his organization Hammer and created his own Dark Avengers team. As with his Dark Avengers team, the Dark X-Men team members were also selected by Osborn, for the most part anyway. The team included Mystique, Emma Frost, who was Black Queen at the time, Namor, Dawkins Wolverine, Mimic, Omega, Cloak, and Dagger, who have both been, I think, disputed mutants in the past, and the alternate version of Hank McCoy, known as Dark Beast, who hails from the Age of Apocalypse reality. Number 4, New Dark X-Men. Madeline Pryor leads this new team of Dark X-Men. The team was put together by her when she felt compelled to take action. As Madeline says to Havoc in issue number 1 of Dark X-Men, "You should know by now that I'll wage war against anyone if I think it's just," donning her new Crown of Mercy. Yep, Maddie gets her own team of X-Men in the second volume of Dark X-Men, which began just this year in 2023. As of issue number 2, the team has grown to include Havoc, Gambit, Maggot, Azazel, Monet's brother Marius St. Croix as M-Plate, New Mutant Feint from Children of the Atom, where she was formerly introduced as Gimmick, and Zero, who actually possesses Wolverine's android clone, Albert. What a weird, wacky series. I really need to add this one to my reading list. Sounds great to me. Number 3, Gamma Earth. The fate of the X-Men here was tragic, hence why I'm including them here on my list. They hail from the reality we get a glimpse into in Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley's Hulk series from 2021, and it's issue number 5. Here we get to see what a future world is like after it has been fully gamma irradiated thanks to gamma bombs that went off the world over. This is because in this reality, Banner was able to test the bomb, not needing to actually save Rick Jones. As such, the bomb testing continued to the point that the weapon was perfected, handed over to the US military. They used it to do things like wipe out all mutants, considering them a threat. Yikes. Number 2, Reichsman. The Reichsmen come from a world where Germany and Axis won during World War II. They made their first appearance in Excalibur Weird War 3, issue number 1, and they are about as weird and disturbing as you would imagine them to be. This reality, Earth 597, is also home to the disturbing alternate version of the Excalibur team known as the Lightning Force. The Reichsmen are led by Herr Moira McTaggart, Reich's Minister of Genetics, with the team including alternate versions of Havoc, Psylocke, Rogue, Storm, and Banshee. Number 1, Days of Future Past. This X-Men team did not fare so well, so they literally reached back into the past to get help so that their future could be prevented from ever coming to pass. In this reality, known as Days of Future Past, named after the story it appears in, or as designated reality number Earth 811, mutants end up being hunted down by Sentinels who take over. Not only are the X-Men almost all gone or dead or otherwise locked up and contained for being mutants, as well as all of the mutant population, stripped of their rights and freedoms, but non-mutant superheroes were also wiped out as well. It's truly a bleak reality. This team of X-Men is able to get a message back to their past selves thanks to the help of Wolverine, who breaks them out, giving Rachel Summers and Kitty Pryde in this timeline enough cover for Kitty to travel back in time through her own consciousness.
At number 10, the Justice League. Nah, just kidding. At number 10, what if Spidey kept the symbiote suit? Big shout out to Smasher6763 for suggesting this skeletal Peter Parker from Earth 9811. Imagine a reality where the heroes and villains are trapped on Battleworld after the events of Secret Wars and never return to Earth. Instead, they settled down, got hitched, and had families. Amidst all this, Spider-Man still sports the black symbiote costume, never having it removed by Reed Richards. Over time, the symbiote consumed Peter's body, leaving nothing but a skeleton underneath. It's this horrifying revelation that Peter's been deceased for ages and Venom's been pulling the strings. Yet Peter's mind retains a glimmer of consciousness, as his consciousness was absorbed by Venom, making the whole ordeal even eerier. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Alert, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9 is the Revengers. Thank you, Jack of Clubs 6229 for suggesting this one. In the eerie annals of alternate realities, one of the most chilling versions of the Avengers emerges from the Cancerverse, a nightmarish realm where life has conquered Earth. This gruesome transformation was orchestrated by none other than Sentry, the once celebrated Lord Marvel. In a desperate bid to stave off his terminal cancer, Marvel struck a bargain with the enigmatic Many-Angled Ones. These eldritch entities resided in the intersections of the multiverse and offered him immense power in exchange for annihilating the Grim Reaper itself. Marvel accepted, thus transmuting his universe and consequently his closest allies into grotesque parodies of their parallel selves. The Revengers, as they came to be known, were grotesque and terrifying. Carol Danvers sports a nightmarish visage, to say the very least, while the Hulk is sporting menacing horns, and Thor's beard has been replaced with withering tentacles. Their purpose? To corrupt Earth 616 and spread the influence of the insidious Many-Angled Ones across the multiverse, in a macabre battle that ultimately met its end when Thanos restored the Grim Reaper to the Cancerverse, extinguishing the Revengers' unholy reign. At number 8, Dark Beast, who we've covered before, but many of you in the comments seem to love him, so I thought I'd bring him up again. While regular Beast is known for his intellect and roles in various superhero teams, his dark counterpart takes on a chilling turn in the Age of Apocalypse timeline. In this dystopian world where Xavier's demise leads to Magneto's leadership in Apocalypse's early onslaught, Beast's transformation into a villain is a stark departure from his original self. See, without Xavier's moral compass to guide him, he indulges in unhindered experimentation and loses his compassion entirely. Dark Beast becomes one of Apocalypse's chief scientists, mercilessly torturing and experimenting on both humans and mutants, including Cyclops and Jean Grey. Escaping to Earth 616, he assumes the identity of his counterpart, the 616, Hank McCoy, committing heinous acts, including the unaliving of the childhood friends of his doppelganger. Dark Beast's sinister journey culminates with his alliance with Onslaught, leaving a haunting trail of darkness across alternate dimensions. At number 7 is the zombified Quicksilver. Shout out to Totally Not GRF for pointing out that the Marvel Zombies universe is terrifying once you realize that the entirety of Earth got affected with the virus in a single day because of a zombified Quicksilver. That's right. Sent back to Earth to confront the zombie menace, Pietro encounters what seems to be Scarlet Witch, only to discover that it's the devious zombie Mystique in disguise. In a harrowing turn of events, Pietro is bitten on the neck, succumbing to infection. But here's the real nightmare. With his incredible speed, zombified Quicksilver becomes a global vector, spreading the contagion far and wide, making containment impossible. It seems even our mightiest heroes can become harbingers of doom in alternate realities. At number 6, Earth 666. Earth 666's Avengers of the Undead. Thank you to Sir Striker 6420. In Earth 666, the Avengers aren't your typical superheroes. They're the stuff of nightmares. Picture this. Black Widow is an actual Black Widow. Captain America is not just superhuman, but a ferocious werewolf leading the charge. Daredevil is now a demonic force to be reckoned with, serving justice with a sinister twist. Frankencastle is very clever. A Frankenstein's monster version of the Punisher, Frank Castle, embracing the macabre. Hawkeye, more like Hawk's Eye, an avian sharpshooter taking aim with razor-sharp precision. Thor, once the god of thunder, is now a mummified deity wielding ancient powers. Spider-Man is literally a Spider-Man human hybrid. I mean, it speaks for itself. And who could forget Wolverine, the lord of the vampires, sticking his fangs into his victims with relish. In Earth 666, the Avengers are a terrifying ensemble, defending a world where the living dare not tread, battling for survival in the shadows of the undead. At number 5 is the Void, the opposite alternate of Sentry. Shout out to Zack Schneider 5337 for this suggestion. Void, a malevolent force lurking within the psyche of Robert Reynolds, the Sentry. This dark entity, more of a cosmic concept than a person, embodies his deepest, darkest fears and desires. The Void is the yin to Sentry's yang, a relentless force that threatens to consume not just Earth, but the entire multiverse. It's a chilling alternate superhero where the line between hero and villain blurs as the Sentry battles to keep his inner demon at bay. In this eerie twist on the Avengers, the team's greatest adversary isn't an external threat, but a part of themselves, a haunting reminder of the line between heroism and destruction. At number 4 is X-24 from Logan. Shout out to Brilliant 30 Games 127. In the dark, twisted multiverse of comic book adaptations, we've seen our fair share of alternate versions of beloved characters, but none quite as spine-chilling as X-24. In the film Logan, this sinister creation was engineered to be the ultimate unaliving machine, a nightmarish image of Wolverine himself. Unlike the brooding and complex Logan we know, X-24 was a ruthless berserker devoid of any moral compass. He wasn't plagued by inner demons or a sense of duty, he was a pure force of destruction. What made him even more terrifying was his relentless pursuit of Laura, or X-23, who shared Wolverine's blood. Every time X-24 appeared on screen, a wave of anxiety washed over me, knowing that this unrelenting monster would stop at nothing to achieve its grisly objectives. It's a chilling reminder of how alternate versions can take familiar heroes and twist them into our darkest nightmares. At number 3 is Poison. Thank you to Kronos200 for this suggestion. In this alternate version of Spider-Man the Other, Spider-Man's transformation takes a nightmarish turn under the Brooklyn Bridge. You see, instead of embracing his spider powers, he violently rejects them, decapitating his inner spider and leaving his metamorphosis incomplete. As if sensing the chaos, the Venom symbiote abandons MacGarren to merge with Peter Parker. A mental battle rages on, with the symbiote ultimately obliterating what remains of Peter's psyche. Stark Tower now becomes a battleground as the symbiote-possessed Peter, now Poison, confronts Aunt May and Mary Jane. Poison's deluded belief in his creation as an act of love drives him to offer Mary Jane a horrifying choice: to bond with the new symbiote spawn. Wolverine and Luke Cage try to stop him, but Poison's power proves overwhelming. The chilling climax reveals the extent of madness as he revives Gwen Stacy with the symbiote, transforming her into a Carnage-like monstrosity. In this unnerving alternate reality, Spider-Man is unrecognizable and fear lurks just around every corner. At number 2, Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. Shout out to Damon Blackfriar 3238. You guys gotta make some better usernames, holy cow. In the wake of the Skrull invasion, Osborn ascended to power, wielding authority over S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Thunderbolts, bending them to his will. Under his Hammer agency, Osborn recruited a macabre roster of quote-unquote heroes. Among them, Bullseye is masqueraded as Hawkeye, Venom as Spider-Man, and Moonstone as Miss Marvel. Ares and Sentry lingered, tainted by their association with Osborn. Miss Marvel wisely refused to join the team, aware of Osborn's malevolent past. But Osborn's recruit of baddies didn't stop there. Daken assumed the mantle of Wolverine, while Novar became Captain Marvel. Osborn himself donned the Iron Patriot suit, a twisted embodiment of patriotism. At number 1, Spider Assassin. Shout out to Lil Do 9796 for bringing this one up. Spider Assassin is a version of our friendly neighborhood hero who's taken a dark turn. It all starts with a trip to Germany, a tragic loss, and a secret romance. You see, as Spider-Man teams up with Wolverine to take down Charlemagne, the stakes rise and morality blurs. The turning point in this reality comes when he chooses to save Charlemagne's sister, Alex, and spirals into a life of espionage and assassination. Now, what truly sets this Spider-Man apart is his enhanced spider sense. With training from Nebo, he transforms it into a weapon for seeing attacks before they're even conceived in the first place. It's an uncanny ability that makes him a formidable force, even modifying his web shooters to fire lethal bullets. Yet as he descends into darkness, this Spider-Man becomes an embodiment of moral ambiguity, losing his identity as the friendly neighborhood hero. And as such, he remains in Europe, accepting sinister assassination jobs, leaving us to ponder the full consequence of a spider sense weaponized to its full potential. At number 10 is X-24. In the dark and twisted multiverse of comic book adaptations, we've seen our fair share of alternate versions of our beloved characters, but in the film Logan, this sinister creation was engineered to be the ultimate unaliving machine, a nightmarish mirror image of Wolverine himself. Unlike the brooding and complex Logan we know, X-24 is a ruthless berserker devoid of any moral compass. See, he wasn't played by inner demons or a sense of duty. He was a pure force of destruction. And what made him even more terrifying was his relentless pursuit of Laura, or X-23, who shared Wolverine's blood. Every time X-24 appeared on screen, a wave of anxiety washed over myself, knowing that this unrelenting monster would stop at nothing to achieve its grisly objectives. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate it. At number 9 is Zombieverse Wolverine. In the eerie expanse of the multiverse, we stumble upon a spine-chilling variant of Wolverine, who's a zombie. Venture into Earth Z, or Earth 2149, a nightmarish realm in which this gruesome iteration, Wolverine's fate, takes a sinister twist as he, along with a select other few heroes, feast upon the remains of the cosmic entity Galactus. But it doesn't stop there. The unholy banquet bestows upon zombie Wolverine the dreaded power cosmic. Damn, picture it. The relentless savagery of Wolverine as a zombie, fueled with the limitless might of the cosmos. It's a ghastly unison that transforms Logan into a nightmarish force, a walking apocalypse with claws and a cosmic energy at his disposal. This incarnation of Wolverine sends shivers down the spine, reminding us that within the multiverse, terror knows no bounds. At number 8 is the Lord of the Vampires. This spine-chilling incarnation of Logan emerged from the pages of the What If series, specifically in Volume 2, Issue 24. Here, a fateful turn of events sees Storm choosing to stay by Dracula's side during the X-Men's clash with the infamous Vampire Lord. The consequences were world-altering, as Wolverine and his fellow heroes fell victim to capture and transformation. Yet the adamantium-laced warrior's indomitable will proved way too powerful for Dracula's control. In a gruesome twist, Wolverine overcame the Vampire Lord, seizing the throne and becoming the new Lord of the Vampires. Picture Wolverine with fangs, ruling over legions of bloodsuckers, and capable of enslaving anyone with a single bite. It's a nightmarish blend of clawed ferocity and a moral bloodlust that would haunt even the most fearless of souls. At number 7 is Cancerverse Wolverine. Cancerverse Wolverine is a denizen of Earth 10011, remains a shadowy figure in the Marvel Universe. In this eerie reality known as the Cancerverse, the Grim Reaper has been utterly obliterated, and in the absence of the unalive, paradoxically, it gave birth to a cosmic nightmare. Cancerverse Wolverine's appearance alone is enough to send shivers down your spine. In a world where mortality is non-existent, life spirals into a grotesque spectacle, a chilling reflection of the importance of balance in the universe. Because in this twisted realm, even a hero like Wolverine becomes a harbinger of terror, a reminder that the natural order of things, no matter how unsettling, always has its rightful place. At number 6 is Old Man Logan. Old Man Logan is a haunting iteration of Wolverine, emerging from Earth 807128. In this chilling reality, the claws of tragedy run deep. See, Logan was once a hero who now carries the crushing weight of guilt upon his adamantium-laced shoulders. Mysterio's sinister dissipation led him down a path of unwitting euthanization, annihilating his fellow X-Men. Time catapults us into a future where Logan has abandoned his iconic alias, opting simply for his first name to escape the specter of his past. But destiny refuses to release his grip. Logan attempts to evade heroics, settling into a family life, yet peril relentlessly pursues him. When the ruthless Hulk gang eliminates his loved ones over the late protection money, Logan's dormant savagery ignites. The descent into vengeance becomes an inescapable plunge, culminating in a gory reckoning that liberates his world from the clutches of the deranged Pappy Banner and his nightmarish clan. In the desolate landscape of Old Man Logan's reality, even heroes succumb to darkness, making it one of the most spine-tingling alternate Wolverines in the multiverse. And at number 5, my personal favorite is Old Man Venom. Enter the Venomverse, where unimaginable transformations await. In this universe, we get to see Old Man Logan devoured by a venom-infested T-Rex. But here's the twist. The symbiote decides that Logan is a superior host and merges with him. The result is Venom Wolverine, or as I like to call him, Old Man Venom, a character oozing with insanity, ethics thrown out the window, and an utter disregard for consequences. universe. Sure, he might have a laundry list of symbiote vulnerabilities, making him marginally less formidable than your typical regenerating Logan, but the sheer terror he instills is undeniable. Venom Wolverine is a monstrous fusion of two iconic characters, delving into a spine tingling combination of ferocity and chaos. Next time you delve into alternate realities, keep an eye out for this hair-raising incarnation of Wolverine. At number 4 is Wolverine Noir. In the shadowy realms of this alternate universe, we stumble upon Jim Logan, a character shrouded in mystery and intrigue. This noir iteration of Wolverine takes us on a journey through the Marvel Noirverse, offering a distinctive twist on the iconic mutant. In this iteration, Logan isn't a berserker on the battlefield, but a detective navigating the murky waters of crime. It's a fitting role for a man with heightened senses and a knack for tracking. Wolverine Noir paints a gritty picture of reminiscent of classic noir films, amplifying the eerie ambience that defines this universe. This version delves into Wolverine's past, mirroring the harrowing narrative from his origin series. Raised by a fervently religious father, Jim's childhood is the haunting tale of sermons and strife, shaping his path into the detective he becomes. So while we've seen Logan in countless forms, Jim Logan's chilling incarnation stands out as one of the most intriguing and unsettling alternate versions of this iconic character. At number 3 is Phoenix Wolverine. In the realm of eerie alternate Wolverines, the incarnation known as Phoenix Logan takes a chilling spot on our list. Picture a grim future where Thor ascends to the All-Father status and Loki, the ever-malevolent trickster, decimates humanity just to torment his brother. In this apocalyptic landscape, Wolverine, after his own demise, becomes a new vessel for the awe-inspiring Phoenix Force. With this cosmic power coursing through his adamantium-laced veins, Wolverine exhibits an array of mind-bending abilities, even at one point going as far as to save Loki from the formidable Celestials. However, the terror takes on a different twist when a future iteration of Doctor Doom crosses this Wolverine's path, obliterating him. Yet thanks to the Phoenix Force, his demise is merely a minor setback. To secure Doctor Doom's defeat, Logan willingly sacrifices himself, channeling his power through Thor's mighty Mjolnir in the relentless battle. At number 2 is Akihiro. Akihiro, also known as Daken or Fang, is a chilling alternate version of Wolverine. During the Dark Reign storyline, when Norman Osborn took control of the comics, Daken emerges as a sinister counterpart. See, Osborn had formed Hammer and the Dark Avengers, a team comprised of rebranded villains, as Avengers replacements. While Osborn attempted to recruit original Avengers, most of them declined. Daken, however, joined as Dark Wolverine. Akihiro might not currently be villainous, but during that time, he was a bona fide baddie. What makes him terrifying in the series is his lack of a moral code, even compared to his father, who isn't known for his strength. Daken, like Wolverine, is a highly skilled fighter and assassin, groomed from childhood to be a lethal weapon for Romulus against Logan. This alternate version of Wolverine is a dark reflection of the iconic hero. And at number 1 is Dark Claw. Dark Claw, a fusion of Marvel's Wolverine and DC's Batman from the Amalgam Universe, is undeniably one of the scariest alternate versions of Wolverine. Imagine the brooding intensity of Batman mixed with the raw, animalistic ferocity of Wolverine. It's a chilling combination, and Dark Claw inherits Bruce Wayne's wealth and tragic backstory, ensuring that he's a complex and deeply haunted character. But what truly sets him apart is his adamantium-coated skeleton and healing factor borrowed from Wolverine, obviously. This mending of two iconic, fear-inducing heroes creates a formidable force. Dark Claw embodies the fear of the night, blending the relentless pursuit of justice with the untamed power of Wolverine's regenerative abilities and his claws. Crossing paths with Logan Wayne would send shivers down anyone's spine.
Coming in at number 10 today is Milkman Man. The DC Universe Wiki says that Milkman Man is an imperfect copy of Superman, but with all that calcium, I gotta assume he has the strongest bones that you and I have ever seen. In JLA/Doom Patrol Special, The Milk Wars, the Doom Patrol has discovered that an interdimensional corporation called Retco has been stealing stories, reconfiguring them, and repackaging them for new markets. Retco has embedded itself into the current continuity, using the radioactive milk of psychic cows to quell the more dangerous impulses of the Justice League and turn them into heroes that are safe for the masses. That is literally the quote from the official summary, I am not even joking. Milkman Man specifically has all the same powers as the famous Kryptonian superhero, only he's a milkman and central part of the Community League of Rhode Island. Now, this group is actually a very sinister collection of pleasant-spoken normal folks. I know this doesn't sound scary, necessarily, but it's just like unsettling, like Twilight Zone style. Please do yourself the favor of reading this story and trying to figure out what the heck is going on, because it took me like a hot minute. Number 9. Red Sun Superman. Instead of landing in America, Red Sun Superman landed in the Soviet Union, and that allowed the Soviets to weaponize him instead of allowing him to live the quote normal life he traditionally has in the US. He received severe training that not even the original Superman underwent, as Red Sun Superman was always meant to be a weapon. This allowed him to become quite strong as he paired his severe training with his new communist sense of duty. If the training he underwent wasn't enough to prove this power though, Superman advanced the Soviet Union to almost worldwide control without resorting to war, and he virtually eliminated poverty and disease. While this sounds pretty great, it was supported by some pretty awful tactics behind closed doors by Superman himself, but also those who worked under him. This powerful version of Superman is a much more skilled Superman, if not slightly more ruthless, as that's what he was raised to be. But it was his ability to eventually realize the fault in his own actions and allow the world to become a utopia that kind of puts him a cut above everyone else, which is why he is at number 9 today. But he did turn people into mindless cyborg zombies, so he's a little terrifying. Number 8. Earth 17 Superman. On Earth 17, superheroes are a product of government experiments. The Superman of this universe, who was called Overman, was the first hero, with the other heroes being spawns of his DNA. Now this may be weird, but that ain't the weird part. He also doesn't seem horrifying at all yet, does he? Well, after contracting a certain kind of physically transmitted disease from another person, like that kind of disease, if you know what I'm saying, he ends up going insane and destroys the Justice League and reduces his entire world to rubble. He then gets his filthy paws on a doomsday device that he intends to use on Earth 17 to completely wipe it out. The Crisis on Infinite Earths destroyed this reality, just like DC tried to destroy such a naughty Superman story, even having different iterations of Overman, who we will be talking about in just a moment. But the internet never forgets DC Comics, and people like me exist to remind everyone of the things you published into this world, like naughty Superman contracting naughty diseases and reducing the world to ash. Ick. Number 7. Eradicator Lois. For this point, we are going back in time to the infamous death of Superman's story. When Superman fell in the fight between himself and Doomsday, it didn't hit anyone as hard as it hit Lois Lane. Well, in the dark multiverse, something curious happened. After some time passed and Lois saw the effects of a Superman-less world, she eventually traveled to the Fortress of Solitude to return Superman's cape. What she never expected was for the Kryptonian Eradicator to show up. This defender of Krypton is the reason that Superman does eventually come back to life in the real world, placing Clark in the Kryptonian life matrix that was supposed to revive Superman. In this story though, it takes longer than expected, and so, assuming that the revival was a failure, the Eradicator instead places the powers of Superman into the body of Lois Lane. Unfortunately, this is the dark multiverse though, and so this newly superpowered Lois Lane throws almost all caution to the wayside and uses her powers recklessly, saving the day, sure, but with no regard for collateral damage or repercussions. She ends wars, feeds the hungry, destroys the military-industrial complex, all that good stuff, but she also wipes out countless lives, including Batman's, Lex Luthor's, and she's even responsible for the fall of Superman when he does finally return. The whole story is super tragic, but that also makes it one of the best to come out of the dark multiverse, in my opinion. Number 6. Overman. I told you we would talk about another Overman. This version of our favorite red and blue boy didn't end up in Kansas when he was ejected from Krypton. No, this Kal-El found himself in Sudetenland, Germany in 1938, and he was acquired by a certain mustached fascist. With Kal and Kryptonian tech, the Reich were obviously able to win World War II and rule over the entire planet. Later, Overman would become disgusted with the stashed man when his annihilation of those he deemed lesser had been finalized. Although Superman still served that man's political party, weird set of morals there, I don't know. Eventually though, he was cloned and received a romantic partner in the form of Overgirl. But after her passing, he was completely heartbroken and he supplied information to the freedom fighters who long opposed the fascists, which eventually led to the end of the new Reichman, this world's evil Justice League, and the city of Metropolis. With the grief of all those losses holding him down, he was overthrown by his own best friend. But I wouldn't feel too bad for him though, he was pretty bad. Number 5, Ultraman. Who would have thought that a Superman who is just a giant man baby would be one of the more powerful versions of the character? Ultraman is the Superman of Earth 3, where strength and power are held above everything else, even good and righteousness. Ultraman was born on the dying Krypton to Jor-El, who was able to secure a life pod for his incredibly powerful son, who he saw as his best chance of revenge. While in his life pod, Kal-El was given the ideology of becoming the strongest possible being, eschewing all weakness in himself and in others. His rocket crash landed in Smallville, right through the home of the dysfunctional couple Johnny and Martha Kent, who he forced to be his parents until he was 7 years old, when he then took their lives and burned their home to the ground. He took the name Ultraman, took over the Earth, and created the crime syndicate of America. Unlike Superman, Ultraman actually gets more powerful from kryptonite, and the sun is what makes him weaker, which is fine because he will literally just move the moon to block out the sun. Number 4, Brutal. Brutal is a cloned version of Superman, but unlike a certain bizarre version of Superman, this duplication was done by none other than Darkseid himself. Darkseid raised the resulting clone into a weapon and unleashed him on the superheroes of Earth 2, along with Steppenwolf and the other Hunger Dogs. Now, when Steppenwolf tried to subvert his master Darkseid and take Earth as his own, Brutal ruthlessly, or some might say brutally, takes Steppenwolf from this plane of existence with his heat vision, establishing his devotion to his Lord Darkseid, being all like, "Let me make my intentions clear, hail Darkseid," which is just a sweet line after you take down a general of Darkseid. Now the Earth became lost to Darkseid's minions, and eventually, after a lot of other stuff, Kal-Zod, Earth 2's really awesome Superman, faced Brutal in combat, and after a furious battle, showed that Brutal was just an imitation, and a cheap one at that, as his body began to deteriorate, all Spider-Man clone degradation style, and the day was finally saved. Number 3, Injustice Superman. The Superman of the Injustice universe has pretty much the same history as the baseline Superman, but when the Joker kidnaps the pregnant Lois Lane, it lures Superman into a trap of fear gas. In this fear-induced state, Superman hallucinates his wife as the villain Doomsday and instantly attacks, flying Lois and what would have been John Kent into space, taking their lives, and also inadvertently causing a nuclear detonation to destroy his city, Metropolis. After suddenly losing his city, wife, and his baby, Superman goes into a pretty honestly understandable rage, bursting into the interrogation room where Batman is learning the true intentions of the Joker, and he plunges his super fist straight through the clown's chest. Following these events, Superman takes control of the Earth and rules it as a tyrant. He turns on and destroys his friends, is manipulated by Wonder Woman, holds nothing back, and puts the entire Earth under the control of his regime. He is a seriously hardcore version of Superman who has actually been revisited recently in John Kent's comic book story, where he even took the life of Earth 3's Ultraman pretty easily. It was kinda nuts. Number 2, Super Doom. On Earth 45, Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, and Clark Kent are scientists instead of reporters, and they use their smarts to build a machine that can turn thoughts into reality, which, I gotta be honest, how the heck did they think that was a good idea? I can think of 10 things right now off the top of my head that should never become reality. Anyways, using the aforementioned thought to form machine, they tried to create a being called Superman, who would be capable of doing amazing things and who could save worlds. But when they are forced to give their idea over to Overcorp, these guys decide to rebrand and end up creating a monstrosity, Superman, the Last Knight of Tomorrow, or as he's better known to everyone else, Super Doom. With a corporate-fueled agenda of destroying all competition, Super Doom quickly becomes the strongest super being on its own planet, and then entered into the bleed space to take out all the other versions of Superman across the multiverse. Of course, bad guys never win forever, so after defeating and devouring multiple different Supermen of multiple different Earths, he was stopped by the Superman and Lex Luthor of Earth 22, who stranded him between universes. He's since been used in a few other storylines and remains one of the most formidable evil versions of Superman to this day because he didn't actually pass away. He's still out there, just like between universes. Crazy. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's Bump in the Night. For starters, DC's House of Horror is basically a collection of short stories featuring different characters. They are all equally interesting and horror themed. The Possession of Billy Batson and the Last Laugh stories are particularly interesting, but for today's video, I think we want to talk about the very first one, Bump in the Night. This short story follows Martha Kent on the night Kal-El arrives on Earth. Jonathan Kent has gone out to explore what exactly caused a big bang and trail of smoke on the Kent's farm, but he doesn't come back. As Martha worries about where her husband has gone to, she goes back inside, but Martha starts hearing bumping and thumping coming from upstairs in the house. All of a sudden, a demonic humanoid child crashes through the ceiling and begins attacking her. She tries to run to the barn, but fiery beams of energy fire from the creature, blowing up the barn. She takes refuge in her truck only for the creature to land on the hood, shrieking. It throws the truck across the yard and Martha gets out wounded only for the truck to explode. The tiny little creature then flies away with the symbol of an S emblazoned on its own chest. Coming in at number 10 is The Amazing Spider. On Earth 11638, Uncle Ben never loses his life, and instead he helps train Peter Parker with his new spider powers and eventually even helps him to form Parker Industries. Now, given the title of this list, you should know that things aren't all hunky-dory. Peter and Uncle Ben end up building a machine that allows Peter to lure alternate versions of Spider-Man to his reality, where he then absorbs their powers to increase his own, making him the most powerful hero on Earth and eliminating the need for any other hero, but also taking the lives of other alternate hims. See, that did take a very dark turn. When he tried to do this to the Spider-Man from Earth 616, our Spider-Man, this powerful version of Peter loses his life and his soul is sent to hell, where, with the assistance of the Infernal Hulk, he is fused with the spirit of vengeance, becoming the Ghost Spider. Not the Gwen Stacy Ghost Spider, but a Ghost Rider Spider. A Ghost Rider Spider. That's what we're going with. Ghost Rider, for any who don't know, is insanely powerful. He has been called in to deal with the Hulk and has even gone toe-to-toe with Galactus, so this Spider-Man Ghost Rider hybrid is no joke at all. Plus he's kinda evil and he looks really cool. Number 9, Assassin Spider-Man. In What If Spider-Man vs. Wolverine number 1, we are introduced to Spider Assassin, a Spider-Man variant who is just a little bit more loose when it comes to the morals that he follows. In his universe, with great power comes great responsibility and greater enemies, which led the Peter of Earth 8351 to leave New York City in order to protect his family from the villains who would make personal strikes against him. Instead, Peter joined up with Wolverine, and because of their time traveling and working together, he is much less opposed to sending criminals to the afterlife, meaning he does it on the regulars. He is also almost always serious, not doing his normal quips and jokes that we are really used to from Peter, who usually uses it to cope with difficult or precarious situations. His serious nature is also reflected in his costume with a much darker look, especially those black eyes, which are really cool. His web shooters have also been shown to shoot black webs in some panels, and they also include some more lethal means of dealing with his foes. He is an effective addition to the Spider-Man army though when it was formed, and an extremely effective Spider-Man just in general. Number 8, Marvel Universe vs. The Punisher. In this universe, the Punisher interrupts an arms deal involving what he thinks is a briefcase nuke, only to discover that it is in fact a man-made virus that, for Frank Castle, makes him immune to infection, illness, and disease. That's really good, but it didn't quite do this for everyone else. The problem here is that the chemical weapon found its way into the water supply and then into the food, and started in New York, spreading to the whole world through infected travelers. And then it started turning people and heroes into starting with Spider-Man. Spider-Man of Earth 11080 became infected with one of Marvel's deadliest viruses, which transformed him into a raging tribal. He viciously ate the Rhino on live TV and started an infection that eventually took over the entire world. In this new post-apocalypse, this terrifyingly evil Spider-Man became Patient Zero and took control of a portion of the former New York City, facing a rival tribe of other man-eaters led by the Kingpin, who took Spider-Man's mate, Mary Jane, prompting Patient Zero Spider-Man to hire the immune Frank Castle to rescue her. But then he met his sticky end, so... Number 7, Spider from Earth Earth 15. There are a lot of characters who go by the name of the Spider, including a pulp hero from way back in the day, but specifically today, we are talking about a Peter Parker variant that's bonded with the Carnage symbiote coming from Earth 15. The Spider of Earth 15 is a much more sadistic, sociopathic, red-headed version of Peter Parker, and that's the scary part. He's a ginger. He even claims that he has been sentenced to a total of 67 life sentences in prison for the crimes that he has committed. But of course, to make him just a bit more lovable, he has a sense of humor very much like that of Deadpool. It's great, if not a little unnerving. The Spider was introduced in Exiles number 12 and was a big part of the reality-saving Weapon X team featured in that story, being a sometimes leader of the team. As a Carnage-bonded sociopath, he was pretty powerful, but he nonetheless was sent to the afterlife by a blast from Firestar in Exiles number 44. When you're dealing with the multiverse, there is bound to be someone stronger than you, no matter what you do and who you are, even if you're a scary Spider-Man. Number 6, Zombie Spider-Man. Yes, Zombie Spider-Man is essentially the same Spider-Man everyone is used to, all the same powers at least, except after being bit by a zombie, he now also has a ravenous hunger that cannot be sated no matter what, combined with the fact that he is essentially undead and can take a whole whack more punishment. Both of those factors led him and a group of other heroes, who were zombified, to consume the Silver Surfer and Galactus, which gave them all the power cosmic. With the power cosmic, the zombie Galacti, which is what they called themselves, have the ability to absorb and tap ambient cosmic energy into their bodies at will and expel those energies, like channeling beams of energy through their hands and teleporting through time and space, devouring entire planets. With this power, they have the potential to phase through objects, accelerate the evolution of life forms, see the past by peeling back the layers of time, time travel, and manipulate, absorb, and discharge any form of energy or radiation. But they mainly use it to get to the next snack. Though Spider-Zombie loses all this power eventually, he still had it and was an incredibly powerful version of Spider-Man, and also a really scary one because he would eat your face. Number 5, Dark Ages. Dark Ages is, in my opinion, a pretty underrated story. Essentially, a superpowered machine known as the Unmaker was causing massive devastation in the core of the planet, and in an attempt to stop the threat, a portal created by Doctor Strange released an EMP that completely crippled the world's technology. The story essentially sees the world rebuilding itself without the use of any advanced technology, while also dealing with the many threats of the world, including werewolves, vampires, and supervillains, specifically the mutant apocalypse. Now, Miles Morales was one of the survivors of this new society, although here, Miles became bonded to the Venom symbiote, which he used to try and help people during the first early years. They worked really well together until the Carnage symbiote also forcibly bonded itself to Miles as well. Now, this isn't like Carnage kicked out Venom or anything like that. It's Carnage corrupting Venom, and the two symbiotes together both agreed to take over Miles' body. And they even went to work for Apocalypse in exchange for a ship to escape the Earth. All the while, Miles remained unconscious, being used as an unwilling host. It sounds horrifying because it is. That's scary. Number 4, Poison. Ever since the first time Venom and Spider-Man bonded together, that pesky little symbiote would continuously try to merge with Peter Parker, but he would only get about halfway before Peter could repel him. Now, what happens if Venom finally gets what he wants? Well, in the What If Spider-Man The Other story, we get to find out. After Peter is semi-defeated by Morlun and cocoons himself under Brooklyn Bridge, he is offered the chance to be resurrected by the Spider God called The Other. But instead of allowing this like he does in the normal continuity, Peter refuses and is instead stuck in his cocoon, half alive. Now we cut to Venom, who, being Spider-Man's crazy ex-girlfriend, senses the vulnerability of his soulmate and completely ditches his current host, Mac Gargan. He intercepts Peter's body, and after months of struggling inside the cocoon, monstrously breaking down Peter Parker, Venom fully bonds to Peter. Now the pair are truly one and the same, with all the fully realized powers that come with being a symbiote, which include being able to replicate itself and host more than one body, producing stingers that are strong enough to pierce Luke Cage's skin, and the newly dubbed being, known as Poison, was even able to resurrect Gwen Stacy in a form that seems to take after Venom's offspring, Carnage. Number 3, Spider-Man Pestilence. Yes, that's right, everyone's favorite web-slinger was a Horseman of Apocalypse at more than one point, but every time he has been, he was Pestilence. So yes, you lucky nerds are getting 2 points in one here. Look at that. Don't say I never gave you anything, ever. On Earth 5701, Peter goes full spider in his horseman form with 4 arms and 4 legs. It's actually super freaky and I do not like it. He, Archangel, and Famine are tasked with going on a merry reality hopping hunt of Cable, which they ultimately fail at. Now in the Earth 10082 reality, Peter is Pestilence again, but a different kind of terrifying as he is fused with his Pestilence steed because of the techno-organic virus, becoming all white and hairy and pure nightmare fuel. He's like a person with a horse on him. It's scary. He and the other horsemen of this reality go to the mainline Earth to fight the Avengers with Apocalypse, and they kind of lose, but whatever. Number 2, Spider-Man. In Spider-Geddon number 3 of 2018, we are introduced to Spider-Man, a colony of thousands of radioactively powered spiders who in a moment of absolute horror consumed a high school kid by the name of Peter Parker when he fell into their enclosure at Horizon Labs. After consuming Peter Parker, something strange happened. Instead of the spiders just going about their lives, the whole gaggle of spiders gained a sort of hive mind and they took on the form of Peter himself and began fighting crime in the aptly named Cruel York of Earth 11580. Other than his usual Spider-Man powers and the benefits of being a swarm of spiders, the colony is also able to poison its victims with a bite, or if they're hungry for power, they can devour them whole. And it's incredibly hard to actually take out this version of Spider-Man, as even a single spider of the thousands who make up this being survives. It means technically Spider-Man is also still alive, and it can and will eventually multiply to rebuild itself, or himself, or their self, whatever you want to call him. I don't know. And finally, in number 1 today, it's Patton Parnell. I think this is the most terrifying version of Spider-Man I've ever seen. Maybe even more so than Spider-Man, and he's a colony of spiders. Patton Parnell is nothing like Peter Parker. He's a sociopath, a maniac, and he has the ability to transform into a monster Spider-Man hybrid with 8 eyes, 8 limbs, and massive spider-like fangs. Seeing this bald monster thing crawl around your walls and ceiling, that's scary enough, but knowing that he ate at least 3 people, including his uncle, and can implant hundreds of baby spiders into you just by biting you is absolutely nightmare-inducing. Luckily, he gets defeated pretty soon after his creation by Morlun, but at the time, Patton Parnell from Earth 51412 was around. He was very, very powerful and extremely scary.
Number 10, Essex. This version of Mr. Sinister hails from the Age of Apocalypse reality of Earth 295. AOA, or Age of Apocalypse, was a continuity in reality that was born out of Legion, the son of Charles Xavier, traveling back in time and attempting to eliminate Charles's rival, Magneto. However, Legion instead missed his target, and Charles ended up being the one eliminated instead of Magneto. As a result, Legion eliminated his father and ended up accidentally erasing himself. Here, Essex is an ally to Apocalypse, a somewhat reluctant one though, as he also attempted to take power for himself when he merged together the genes of Jean Grey and Scott Summers in an attempt to create a supremely powerful mutant being, which he hoped to have under his control. Unfortunately for Essex, in attempting to hide this young mutant named Nathaniel Grey from Apocalypse, he lost track of him, and instead, Nate escaped and was found and raised by the Mutant Forge. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to let us know you love us by clicking that like button. Seriously, it's good for you, it's good for me. Number 9, Nathaniel Essex. Technically the original Mr. Sinister. This version of Sinister is the OG. Nathaniel Essex is the man Mr. Sinister was before he became the cape-loving, mutant gene-obsessed man, mad science geneticist that we have today. How did he get there? Well, initially Nathaniel Essex was just a scientist obsessed with Darwin's theory of evolution. He believed that it was possible for people to dramatically evolve based on certain factors, which he found and, of course, named after himself. The loss of his young son only made him throw himself more into his work, but the academic community did not see or appreciate the value of Essex's findings, believing him to be mad and also quite immoral. And honestly, I can see why they felt that way based on his research. They kicked him out of academia as a result of him not letting up on his beliefs surrounding evolution. He would later run into Apocalypse and decide to become a reluctant ally to the mutant, whose very existence proved his theories were true. Number 8. Apocalypse. One of the weirdest but still super brutal versions of Mr. Sinister comes to us from the ultimate continuity and reality of Earth 1610. Sinister has always had his story closely entwined with that of Apocalypse. However, in this comic, he isn't just connected to Apocalypse, he actually becomes Apocalypse. This happens over the course of a few issues after Sinister becomes an enemy to the X-Men, seemingly claiming to be working for Apocalypse, who of course hasn't been seen for years. While some think Sinister is delusional, it's later revealed that he was actually telling the truth, and he eventually transforms straight up into Apocalypse at one point. Number 7. Mother Righteous. Mother Righteous is one of the 4 Sinister clones that replaced Essex after his death. She is known as the clone of Hearts, thanks to the heart-shaped symbol on her forehead. Unlike the other Sinister clones, Mother Righteous is under no illusion that she happens to be the original Mr. Sinister. Instead, she rightfully believes and acknowledges that she is one of 4 clones that he created before he died. She is the only one of these clones who is a female, and she happens to have a very thick accent that is akin but not exactly belonging to East London, but sounds similar to that. Rather than stay based in the realm of science in terms of her purpose to figure out how to solve the evolutionary problem of AI and machines becoming the dominant ruling group in the cosmos, she decided to look into other more mystical means of knowledge, which I think of as another layer to her character that makes her even more unique among all the alternate Sinisters that we've had. Normally you'd never expect a Sinister to be a magic user, and she messes with those expectations that we have for Sinister alternates really beautifully. Number 6. Nathaniel Essex. While Mr. Sinister becomes Apocalypse in the Earth 1610 reality, this isn't the only version of Nathaniel Essex that exists in this continuity. In fact, there is another that appears 3 issues earlier in Ultimate X-Men issue number 46. Initially known as Nathaniel Essex, this version of the character originally worked for Norman Osborn and was working on creating a super soldier as a bioengineer. Not being allowed to run human trials during his time at Oscorp, he ended up using himself as a test subject. Now, he did succeed in acquiring superpowers, but seemingly at the cost of his sanity, believing that a being known as Lord Apocalypse was attempting to reach out and communicate with him, which, as I said before, a lot of people thought he was pretty crazy for that. He does, of course, also end up being reborn as Apocalypse eventually, which I already talked about in my previous point, but we already know about that version. After Apocalypse is defeated by Phoenix, Nathaniel Essex's human body is revealed to still be within Apocalypse's form, meaning that technically we kind of have like 2 versions of Nathaniel, the one that becomes Apocalypse and the one that still remains inside himself and just emerges after. Following the events of Ultimatum, he ends up as a somewhat reformed scientist working for Roxxon Corporation. Number 5. Orbis Stellaris. Orbis Stellaris is another of Mr. Sinister's clones. This clone actually has some reason to believe they are the original Sinister, considering they actually do look the most like the original Nathaniel Essex. However, even this clone is still not he. Orbis Stellaris is more obsessed with solving the evolutionary problem of AI and machines conquering the Earth by looking to the stars. This clone is known as the clone of Spades, thanks to the mark on his forehead, and he focuses more on alien life forms and DNA and cosmic computing, believing that through this research he will be the one to solve the evolutionary problem presented to him by the original Essex. Number 4. House of M. Mr. Sinister also had a role to play in the House of M reality and timeline. Here, he is still sporting a super amazing cape and possibly an even more insane pair of gauntlets and an even more wild and extreme collar than ever before. He is very much rocking the metallic look here. Sinister in this reality is focused on playing catch up as the mutant population has defied all of his estimates, growing even bigger than he imagined it would be at this current point in history. Probably because Scarlet Witch willed it to be so, as this was a reality that was created and manipulated by her. Hence why he would have never predicted this happening. In an attempt to catch up, Sinister creates a mutant child who he hopes will one day become the heart, soul, and savior of the entire planet. The child's name? Nathan, of course. Number 3. Dr. Stasis. Dr. Stasis was the first of the 4 clones of Sinister, outside of the clone of Diamonds, aka Mr. Sinister, who this list is based around, that we'd come to know. We always thought Mr. Sinister was Nathaniel Essex, but it turns out even he was a clone. And in fact, there were others out there that were actually made at the same time, each representing a different suit in a deck of cards. Dr. Stasis is known as the clone of clubs, marked by the symbol on his forehead. He is determined to solve the evolutionary problem of AI and machines rising to ultimate power above all other species and groups by using human experimentation. While Mr. Sinister focuses more on mutant DNA, Stasis focuses instead on human DNA. He actually even thinks mutants are like kinda gross. He's like, I'm all about humans, baby. Number 2, Baron Sinister. One of my favorite versions of Sinister, especially in terms of his look, but also in terms of his behavior. I always imagined this Sinister very much with my Sinister voice. It's me, Mr. Sinister. This version of Sinister is the alternate version who hails from Doctor Doom's smashed up patchwork reality known as Battleworld. Battleworld came to be after the incursions came to a conclusion, with every universe basically smashing into one another in the Marvel multiverse, thereby destroying them all and all of their inhabitants. Doom was the one to save the Marvel multiverse from certain destruction by confronting the Beyonders and ultimately becoming the ruler of this new world, using an insane amount of reality warping power taken from Molecule Man to reform everything and basically hold it together. Baron Sinister is the version of Sinister he created, who rules over his own domain in God Emperor Doom's Battleworld, which is known as Bar Sinister. Number 1. Mr. Sinister! Mr. Sinister himself. As Nathaniel Essex, and with him the original Mr. Sinister that he became is now long dead and gone. Technically, even Mr. Sinister is an alternate. Although at this point, based on how much we've seen him, now that we know the full retcon history of his other clones' origins, he would be considered the original in terms of just how much he appears in the comics as the main Essex and Sinister, but he isn't. However, yeah, that being said, the Mr. Sinister we know from the comics himself could even be a clone, as it's become unclear how many times Sinister has cloned himself, and even he seems to be uncertain at times if he is the original or if he's a clone, and even then, he's technically a clone of another clone. You know what I mean? It's just clones on clones on clones.
Coming in at number 10 today, it's Hulk Hogan. It's Hulkamania, brother! First appearing in Iron Man number 227 in his prime of October 1987, Hulk Hogan witnessed Iron Man defeating Beetle, who tried to steal a Picasso painting from a celebrity charity auction. This moment for Hogan really only lasted about 1 page, and all he did was go, "Body slam! Use a body slam!" And he didn't even say brother, so like that doesn't really count. But sometime later, in Marvel Comics Presents number 45 from March of 1990, Hogan Bogan takes on the Grey Hulk in his Mr. Fix-It persona when they wrestled for the rights to use the Hulk name. Hogan may just be a man, but he seems to be able to take a beating from Fix-It and even dish out a few hits of his own before Fix-It sends him and his amazing handlebar mustache flying out of the arena and landing miles and miles away into someone's living room. And that's one hell of a defeat, brother. Man, there was too much energy for that. I gotta slow down. Okay. And we're gonna become calm now. Here we go. Coming in at number 9 today is Maestro. The Incredible Hulk has certainly been through the ringer in his decorated career, but few versions of the character are the living embodiment of that fact like the Maestro is. An alternative version of Bruce Banner from an apocalyptic future, this version of the character is far more intense and complex than his Earth 616 counterpart. The best way to describe Maestro is to say that he is basically a smarter, older, villainous version of Dr. Bruce Banner, with all the powers and abilities of the original, but with a touch more nuclear radiation due to the conflict that created the dystopian wasteland he comes from. He has much more of a cosmic and spiritual side than the normal Hulk does, but he is also twice as strong as Hulk is, and he retains all the intelligence of Bruce Banner, but with years and years more experience and basically no morals. Despite all that extra strength, brain power, and experience though, he still gets outmaneuvered by the Hulk, who sends Maestro back in time to the site of the gamma bomb that created him. But even then, the Maestro's spirit remained on the bones left behind after the gamma explosion went off and he returned. This bearded green behemoth has been a fan favorite character since his introduction in the Future Imperfect storyline, and his backstory, fighting the Human Torch, Dr. Doom, Namor the Submariner, and Abomination, among others, is pretty intense and a really fun read. Number 8. Aborigine Hulk. Have you ever heard of the House of M? I would assume that you have. It's when Wanda Maximoff changed reality to make the mutant Magneto the ruler of the world with his family. Well, in this world, when Bruce Banner transformed into the Hulk after the gamma explosion, it is believed by Mr. Ross that he is a spy of Magneto and he is hunted down like normal. But not like normal, he travels all the way to Australia and he settles in with a group of Aborigine where he becomes a part of their tribe and finds an inner peace with with Banner and the other guy. But of course, the conflict between the mutants and the last remaining resisting humans finds its way to the Outback and onto the territory of this Aborigine tribe. With a kind of control over the Hulk persona, Hulk and Banner help the humans halt their persecution by their mutant overlords, eventually helping AIM to rule Australia. There's this really cool moment where the Hulk is using a whale to cover a submarine, and it looks super amazing, and it's actually kinda smart. Number 7. The MCU Hulk. While the Hulk in the MCU, played wonderfully by Mark Ruffalo, is initially depicted as more impulsive and primal, as the MCU progresses, a more intelligent side of the Hulk emerges. The Hulk's intelligence evolves over time, ranging from childlike simplicity to a level of reasoning that eventually equals Banner's genius. In Avengers Age of Ultron, the Hulk displays a connection with Natasha Romanoff that showcases a depth of emotion and complexity, but he still retains his childlike intelligence. By Avengers Endgame, however, his intelligence is far more evident as the Hulk merges his bronze with Banner's brains, becoming a merged entity known as Smart Hulk. This version has Banner's intellect, the Hulk's physical might, and a more balanced emotional state, and it is essentially a version of the Hulk that is copied straight from Earth 616's own Incredible Hulk. This portrayal adds layers to the Hulk's character, demonstrating that his intelligence isn't just a result of Banner's consciousness, but an amalgamation of both personas. And it also allows Mark Ruffalo to be his awkward normal self, but green and big, which is always fun. Number 6. Amadeus Cho. Now, unlike almost every other Hulk here, Amadeus Cho is not from an alternate universe to the main 616 Incredible Bruce Banner Hulk. By 15, Amadeus Cho was the 7th smartest person on the planet, with a mind that functioned like a hypercomputer, but that also put a target on his back and led him to become friends with another genius, a guy you may know called Bruce Banner. Cho first popped up on the scene back in 2005, but it wasn't until 10 years later in 2015 when the Hulk got stuck with a dangerous amount of a new type of radiation that Amadeus took on a different form. Using special nanites, Amadeus absorbed the Hulk's powers, becoming a gamma-powered monster and the totally awesome Hulk. But unlike Bruce, Amadeus found himself having much more control over his Hulk persona, and prided himself on being a better and smarter Hulk. Unfortunately, over time that wouldn't completely last, especially when he exiled himself to find control and ended up on Sakaar. When he finally came back to Earth and declared war on his enemies, he had to be stopped by his allies, and in doing so, they injected him with nanites that countered the ones he himself had placed inside of himself. Amadeus didn't lose his Hulk powers, instead he retained just a portion of the power and his darker side, and now goes by the superhero name Brawn. Number 5. Old Man Hulk. Probably the most disturbing version of Hulk I've ever seen would have to be Pappy Banner in the Old Man Logan story by Mark Millar. After the villains took over the world, it is believed that Banner and the Hulk received extra doses of radiation from the atomic devices used in California, which caused Bruce to become just a little bit unhinged. Hulk procreated with Jennifer Walters, his first cousin, creating kids who also had children, and together they all formed the Hulk Gang that viciously rule over Hulkland, which is primarily the whole of the west coast of the USA. Running that kind of an operation takes some intelligence. Now, before you all tell me he didn't do this with Jennifer Walters, like last time I said that, here is the comic panel of him saying that. Okay, now that that's out of the way, this version of Bruce actually has the strength of the Hulk when still in his Bruce Banner form, which is really interesting and also shows that he is still intelligent while being super strong. But when angry enough, Bruce will transform into a massive, almost 30-foot tall Hulk, who still had the same intelligence and was able to eat Old Man Logan whole. Before Logan regenerates and tears himself out from the inside, but he still managed to survive with his head being attached to a robotic body, which is also super cool. Number 4. She-Hulk. The lawyer Jennifer Walters is Bruce Banner's first cousin and probably the closest thing he has to a sibling. It just so happened that as Bruce was seeking some legal aid from Jennifer, she was nearly sent to the afterlife during an assassination attempt, and it's kinda crazy how much that seems to happen in comic books. Well, Bruce saved her life by giving her an emergency blood transfusion fusion, but as a result, she became the She-Hulk. Although she started out as a bit of a savage She-Hulk, when she appeared in issue 1 of her comic in 1980, Jen's normal personality eventually became dominant when she was in her gamma-powered form, giving her access to her intelligence as an incredibly skilled and successful lawyer. In fact, she actually prefers being She-Hulk even in her day-to-day activities, and she puts her skills to use as an Avenger and member of the Fantastic Four. Number 3. Hulk 2099. This version of the Hulk, appearing in the awesome possible future of 2099, where Spider-Man 2099 makes his home, is a guy named John Eisenhart. He was a corporate lawyer for big movie studios who went to go and coerce a group called the Knights of Banner, who were a cult-like group of warriors who followed the ideologies of Bruce Banner. John was going to gain the rights for their name in order to make a movie about them, all while giving them nothing in return. He turns them into this corporation called Sweet Dreams, thinking they'll be brought in peacefully, but it doesn't really go that way. The only Knight of Banner who survives, a kid, goes to a gamma machine, but John saves the kid, pushing him out of the way and being blasted with gamma radiation. John can now turn into the Hulk whenever he wants, he has a super strong prehensile tongue, and he is much more beast-like with massive claws, but he is just as powerful as regular Hulk, but unlike the regular Savage Hulk, John retains his intelligence. That intelligence may not be Bruce Banner levels, but John is a skilled attorney, and that makes him more intelligent than the childlike Green Goliath that we are used to. Number 2. Tyrone Cash. Professor Leonard Williams, aka Tyrone Cash, was originally a brilliant British scientist working at Cambridge University. He was working on a version of the super soldier serum when Bruce Banner joined his team. Like Banner, Williams hated his own body, and like Banner, Williams had his own agenda for wanting to perfect the process. Once the serum was completed, Williams took it and went from Banner's mentor to his predecessor as the Hulk. He took out several people and escaped from the university and has been on the run ever since. He abandoned his old life, allowing everyone to believe he was actually deceased, using his incredible intellect to evade capture for like 16 years. Williams adopted the name Tyrone Cash and became a ruthless gangster, taking out and pillaging the property and wealth of gang leaders and criminals throughout Africa and Asia in the Ultimate Universe. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's Monk. Of all the alternate Hulks we've got here, none are quite like Monk. Monk comes from a little alternate universe story called 5 Ronin, which sees feudal Japanese versions of Wolverine, Punisher, Psylocke, Deadpool, and of course, the Hulk. What's interesting here is that none of these characters seem to have the superpowers that make them superheroes in the regular 616 universe, or if they do, their powers are extremely subtle and low-key. And an excellent example of that is the Hulk/Monk. From reading Hulk's issue of the 5-issue story, we can gather that Monk used to be a ferocious samurai back in his day. Monk is a massive man, and he wielded a massive sword. But in his warrior rages, he would do some pretty unspeakable things, and because of the last one to happen, he swore himself off of the warrior life and instead decided to set his roots on the top of a mountain in a sort of sanctuary, just trying to find inner peace. Even when the nearby villagers came to the former samurai for help against some bandits, he refused until he was visited by a Ronin with a mouth who convinced him to use his rage one last time.